I woke up that morning with my heart pounding and my mind racing, knowing today was not like any other day. The sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting sharp lines across my bedroom floor, and I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear running through my veins. I had spent years building my career, working tirelessly as a lawyer, fighting for justice and truth, and now I was about to face a personal betrayal that had been hidden from me for far too long. Messages on my phone flashed constantly, each one a reminder of the looming confrontation I would have to endure. My family, the people I had trusted all my life, had planned something I never could have imagined. I grabbed my folder, heavy with documents, photos, and recordings that exposed secrets and lies, every page a testament to the deception I had been blind to for so long. My hands trembled slightly, but my resolve was unwavering. I knew that nothing could stop me from uncovering the truth and reclaiming the power that had been stolen from me. Walking down the streets, the city felt both familiar and threatening at the same time, as if every passerby could sense the storm I was carrying inside. Memories of childhood laughter, family dinners, and quiet nights spent together haunted me, each one now tainted by the shadow of deceit. I could feel the weight of the coming confrontation pressing down on me, and yet, beneath that weight, there was a spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. The sound of my own footsteps echoed through the empty streets, blending with the distant hum of traffic and the occasional shout of a street vendor, reminding me that life continued outside of my personal turmoil. I reached the grand mansion where my family had gathered, the doors standing tall and imposing, a symbol of the pride and power they wielded in public. As I stepped inside, the chatter of nearly 100 guests filled the air, each laugh and conversation a mask hiding the tension I knew was beneath the surface. The banner hanging above the entrance read, "Welcome to our pride," mocking me with its false cheerfulness. I could see my parents among the crowd, their smiles forced and practiced, and my siblings laughing with cousins and friends, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and walked further into the room, holding my evidence tightly against my chest. Every glance I exchanged felt like a battle, every word spoken a potential trap. The dinner table was set extravagantly, a display of wealth and opulence meant to impress the guests and distract from the underlying tensions. I moved quietly through the crowd, observing each family member, noting their behavior, recording every subtle glance and whispered conversation, storing it in my mind as potential ammunition. The atmosphere was thick with expectation and hidden agendas, and I could feel my pulse quicken as I anticipated the moment when I would reveal the truth. My heart raced not just with anger, but with the anticipation of justice, the satisfaction that comes from finally confronting those who have wronged you. I approached my parents with a steady step, my voice calm but firm as I addressed the room. "I have something important to share," I said, drawing the attention of every guest. Silence fell like a heavy curtain, and all eyes turned to me. My father's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the gravity of the moment, while my mother's smile faltered, revealing a hint of unease. I opened the folder, revealing documents that exposed years of hidden betrayals, financial manipulations, and personal deceptions that they had carefully concealed. Murmurs swept through the crowd, disbelief and shock spreading quickly as the evidence became undeniable. I spoke clearly, detailing each revelation with precise words, making sure there was no room for denial or excuse. My voice carried authority and conviction, demanding recognition of the truth they had tried to bury. The room felt charged with tension, a mixture of anger, shame, and fear emanating from those who had believed themselves untouchable. I could see my siblings exchanging worried glances, realizing the implications of what I had uncovered. My parents' faces reflected a mixture of guilt and helplessness, knowing that the carefully constructed facade of family pride and control was crumbling before them. I continued, leaving no detail unmentioned, no lie unexposed, ensuring that every guest understood the magnitude of the betrayal. The whispers grew louder, conversations ceased, and all attention focused solely on the evidence I presented. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, tempered by the pain of realizing that the people I loved most had caused me such hurt. But this was not just about anger, it was about justice and reclaiming the dignity that had been denied to me. As I concluded, the room remained silent, the weight of truth settling over everyone present. I closed the folder gently, my hand steady, my gaze unwavering, knowing that the message had been received. I had reclaimed control of my story, asserting my strength and resilience in the face of deception. The guests began to murmur, some in shock, others in quiet admiration, as the reality of the situation sank in. I felt the tension slowly release from my shoulders, replaced by a calm determination to ensure that fairness and accountability would follow. This was only the beginning of a journey that would restore balance, expose hidden truths, and demand recognition for the wrongs that had been committed. I knew that the coming days would require careful planning, strategic action, and unwavering focus, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. My family would no longer dictate the terms of my life. I had taken the first step toward independence, empowerment, and justice. As I left the room, I felt the eyes of every guest following me, a silent acknowledgement of the authority I had reclaimed. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the gardens below, and I inhaled deeply, savoring the feeling of control returning to my hands. Each step I took away from the mansion was a step toward freedom, a declaration that deception and betrayal would no longer define my life. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but my resolve was unshakable, and my mind was clear with purpose. The evidence I carried was more than documents, it was the key to a future where truth prevailed, and justice could not be ignored. As I walked down the steps and into the street, the sunlight warmed my face, and I felt a surge of determination, ready to face the consequences and claim the life I deserved. No one could deny the impact of the revelations I had delivered, and I understood the power that came with knowledge, preparation, and the courage to act decisively. My journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid, the first step taken, and the path to justice and empowerment firmly established. I was Jenny, a lawyer, a daughter, a force to be reckoned with, and nothing would ever be the same again. The betrayal had been exposed, the lies unveiled, and the stage set for a reckoning that would change everything, ensuring that truth and justice prevailed in every aspect of my life. I felt a sense of triumph, tempered by reflection, knowing that the actions I had taken would resonate far beyond this night, shaping the course of my relationships, career, and personal growth in profound and lasting ways. And as the city stretched out before me, bustling with life and possibility, I knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would not only reveal the hidden machinations of my family but also redefine my identity, my power, and the justice I would claim. The next morning, I woke feeling the weight of yesterday's revelations pressing down on me, the memory of my family's shocked faces still vivid in my mind. I had thought I knew them, understood their motives, trusted their words, but now every smile, every casual gesture felt like a mask hiding secrets too long buried. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the bitter warmth calm the storm inside, knowing that today required careful planning, precise action, and unwavering focus. My laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, glowing with emails, messages, and documents that needed scrutiny. Each file, each note, contained evidence, strategies, and connections that could help me strengthen my position and ensure justice would not be denied. I dressed quickly, choosing clothes that projected authority and confidence, a signal to myself and to the world that I would not be underestimated. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to my personal battles, yet every corner seemed charged with possibility, every passerby a potential ally or observer. I walked briskly, mentally rehearsing conversations, anticipating challenges, preparing responses that would leave no room for deflection or excuse. At the office, I encountered my assistant, a young woman bright-eyed and efficient, who handed me the latest updates with a quick smile. "Everything you requested is ready," she said, her tone professional but supportive. I nodded, appreciating her loyalty, knowing that having trusted allies was crucial in the coming days. The first meeting of the day involved reviewing legal documents, contracts, and confidential information, each piece scrutinized for inconsistencies, loopholes, and opportunities. As I worked, my mind drifted briefly to my family, imagining their reactions, their whispered conversations, the way they would interpret my actions. I knew fear, surprise, and guilt would ripple through them, but I also knew patience was essential. Rushing could compromise everything. Around midday, a call came from a former colleague, someone I had relied on in previous battles, offering insight, advice, and additional support. The conversation was precise, strategic, and brief, but it gave me the clarity I needed to proceed with confidence. By the afternoon, I was walking through the halls of my office building, documents in hand, meeting with partners, discussing plans, aligning resources. Each discussion required careful attention, as subtle hints, observations, and suggestions could make a significant difference in outcomes. I could sense tension in the air, an unspoken awareness among colleagues that something significant was unfolding, though they could not grasp the full magnitude. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky with gold and pink, I stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the sprawling city below, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. The evidence, meticulously gathered, was ready to be deployed, the strategy carefully crafted, every potential reaction considered. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the years of dedication, the countless late nights, the sacrifices made in pursuit of justice, and the clarity of purpose that now guided my every decision. I knew that by taking decisive action, I was not only protecting myself but also establishing a precedent, asserting that deception and betrayal would not go unchallenged. Returning to my office, I drafted a series of communications to family members, carefully worded to reveal the information in a controlled, impactful manner. The timing had to be perfect, the delivery precise, and the consequences carefully considered. Each word was chosen for maximum effect, each sentence structured to ensure clarity, impact, and the undeniable revelation of truth. By evening, I prepared for the next stage, a gathering where I would confront my family directly, armed with evidence, ready to challenge, expose, and assert control. The plan required coordination, timing, and unwavering confidence. I reviewed every document, every message, every potential response, rehearsing mentally for the various scenarios that could unfold. When night fell, I left the office with a sense of readiness, determination, and calm. The city lights shimmered below, reflecting on rain-slicked streets, a mirror to the storm that I had tamed within myself. As I approached the mansion, I could feel the energy shift, a quiet tension that signaled anticipation among the gathered guests. The door opened, and I stepped inside, carrying the weight of truth, the power of preparation, and the certainty that justice was within my grasp. Eyes turned toward me immediately, conversations halting, whispers ceasing, as the room sensed the arrival of someone prepared, someone in control. I held my head high, shoulders squared, and voice steady, projecting confidence, authority, and unyielding determination. "There are things you all need to see," I began, and the room fell silent, every eye locked on me, every breath held in anticipation. I opened the folder, revealing a curated selection of documents, photographs, and recordings, each one carefully chosen to illustrate the web of deception, betrayal, and manipulation that had long been hidden. Murmurs rippled through the room, disbelief and shock spreading like wildfire, as faces reflected the impact of undeniable evidence. My parents' expressions shifted subtly from surprise to concern, realizing that the carefully maintained facade of control and influence had been broken. Siblings and extended family members exchanged glances, silently questioning what they had overlooked, what they had failed to notice, and what role they may have played in perpetuating falsehoods. I narrated each piece of evidence clearly, methodically, leaving no gap for doubt, no room for excuses, ensuring that the story of betrayal, secrecy, and hidden agendas became indisputable. The room was charged with emotion, tension, and realization, a moment suspended in time where truth dominated every gaze, every thought, every whispered speculation. I felt a surge of empowerment, tempered by reflection, knowing that this confrontation was not only about personal vindication but also about establishing boundaries, reclaiming dignity, and asserting control over my life. Conversations began to unfold naturally around the evidence, questions raised, defenses considered, but the momentum was firmly in my favor, as the clarity of truth left little room for denial. I watched reactions closely, noting the subtle shifts in posture, expression, and tone, cataloging them mentally for future consideration. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere had transformed, whispers of surprise, awe, and recognition permeated the air, and I could feel a shift in the balance of power within the family dynamic. The careful orchestration of strategy, timing, and presentation had ensured maximum impact, leaving no doubt about the authenticity of the revelations and the credibility of my position. Exiting the mansion, I inhaled the cool night air, savoring the sensation of control, clarity, and empowerment. The streets were quiet, the city lights reflected in puddles on the asphalt, a metaphor for the clarity I had brought to a murky situation. I walked with purpose, each step reinforcing the understanding that truth, preparation, and deliberate action were the foundations of influence, authority, and self-determination. My journey was far from complete, but the groundwork had been laid, momentum established, and consequences set in motion that would ensure accountability, justice, and recognition. I knew that the coming days, weeks, and months would continue to test resolve, strategy, and endurance, but I was prepared, confident, and unwavering. Every plan had a contingency, every detail had been accounted for, and every potential obstacle anticipated, giving me the assurance that the next stages would unfold according to vision and intent. The night stretched ahead, filled with possibilities, challenges, and opportunities, each one an invitation to act decisively, maintain focus, and assert influence. I felt a sense of anticipation, excitement, and calm determination, a combination that empowered me to navigate the complex interplay of relationships, expectations, and hidden motives. The lessons learned from betrayal, exposure, and confrontation were invaluable, providing insight, clarity, and perspective that would guide every decision moving forward. As I walked through the quiet streets toward home, the evidence secured and the initial confrontation complete, I felt the first real sense of liberation, control, and empowerment. This chapter of my life had shifted irrevocably, and I was ready to face the next with clarity, strategy, and unwavering confidence. The path ahead was still challenging, but I carried the tools, knowledge, and determination needed to shape outcomes, demand recognition, and ensure that truth, justice, and personal agency would prevail. And as the city settled into the night, a quiet satisfaction settled in my chest, a reminder that preparation, courage, and decisive action were the ultimate instruments of empowerment and control in a world filled with hidden motives, deception, and unpredictable dynamics. The morning light streamed through the curtains, but I barely noticed it. My mind was consumed with the events of the previous night, the conversations, the reactions, and the shifting dynamics within my family. Every moment replayed vividly in my head, each expression, each whispered comment, every subtle glance filled with meaning. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that today was another step in reclaiming control and asserting the truth. I had prepared for this, and now it was time to act with precision and unwavering focus. Dressing quickly, I chose clothes that reflected authority yet allowed me to move comfortably, ready for any interaction that might arise. The documents I had secured the night before rested in my bag, a physical manifestation of the power and knowledge I now held. Stepping into the city, the air felt charged with possibility, every street and corner seeming to mirror the tension and anticipation building within me. I knew that my family would be expecting some reaction, some continuation of yesterday's confrontation, and I intended to meet their expectations, but on my terms. The office became my sanctuary, a place to plan, organize, and ensure that every action was deliberate and effective. My assistant greeted me with her usual efficiency, handing over updates, messages, and reports that required careful review. Together, we analyzed the information, cross-referencing dates, events, and statements to ensure that no detail was overlooked. Every piece of data, every nuance mattered, and I absorbed it all with intense focus. By mid-morning, I had a clear plan for how to approach the family again, this time with a strategic escalation that would leave no room for misunderstanding or deflection. I could feel the surge of confidence as my strategy solidified, a sense of empowerment that came from knowing exactly what needed to be done. Lunch was brief and unremarkable, taken at my desk as I continued to review, refine, and anticipate the responses I might encounter. Each hypothetical scenario, each potential argument was analyzed, and contingencies were developed to ensure I remained in control. As the afternoon approached, I felt the familiar tension in my chest, a mixture of excitement, determination, and anticipation. I knew that the upcoming gathering would be decisive, shaping the next chapter of my life and reinforcing the boundaries that I had fought so hard to establish. Arriving at the mansion once again, I noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere, hints of anxiety and uncertainty among the staff and guests. They were aware, consciously or unconsciously, that yesterday's revelations had shifted the balance of power. My presence was commanding, my steps deliberate, as I entered the grand foyer, the chandelier casting light across the polished floors. Conversation stilled as I moved through the crowd, my folder clutched tightly, every eye following me, curiosity and apprehension evident on every face. I could feel the weight of their expectations, the unspoken anticipation of another revelation or confrontation. I approached my parents first, their expressions betraying a mixture of guilt, apprehension, and fascination. I knew their reactions were genuine, and I intended to leverage that awareness to guide the interactions that would follow. Opening the folder, I selected documents that expanded on yesterday's disclosures, revealing additional layers of deception and manipulation that had gone unnoticed. I spoke clearly, methodically, each sentence precise, each word chosen to convey authority, truth, and inevitability. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room, and I watched as the carefully constructed facade of family pride began to unravel further. My siblings and extended relatives shifted uncomfortably, realizing that their complicity or ignorance could no longer protect them. I maintained eye contact with each key figure, ensuring that the message was received, and that the weight of truth pressed heavily upon them. By early evening, the gathering had reached a turning point, alliances were being reconsidered, conversations had shifted, and the atmosphere had transformed from casual socializing to tense anticipation. I had orchestrated this progression deliberately, ensuring maximum clarity, impact, and control over the narrative. Exiting briefly to the balcony, I surveyed the city below, reflecting on the magnitude of what had been accomplished and the power that came with preparation, focus, and unwavering resolve. The lights of the streets twinkled, indifferent to the personal battles unfolding above, yet I drew strength from the sense of control I had reclaimed. Returning inside, I addressed the room once more, guiding discussions, clarifying misunderstandings, and reinforcing the conclusions drawn from the evidence presented. Each statement, each response, each carefully timed pause contributed to the narrative, solidifying the impact of the revelations and the shift in authority. As the night deepened, I observed reactions with keen attention, cataloging expressions, tones, and body language, knowing that this information would guide my next steps. My family had begun to understand the consequences of their actions, the inevitability of accountability, and the reach of the truth that I wielded. By the time the evening concluded, the room was charged with a mixture of respect, awe, and apprehension, as guests departed with a new awareness of my presence and authority. I lingered briefly, reviewing the documents, confirming the details, and ensuring that every action taken was aligned with the plan. Stepping outside into the cool night air, I inhaled deeply, savoring the sense of empowerment, control, and clarity that had been achieved. The path forward was still challenging, filled with potential obstacles and unforeseen developments, but I felt prepared, confident, and capable. I knew that every detail, every step, and every action taken in the coming days would reinforce the authority, justice, and truth I had begun to establish. As I walked through the streets, the city lights reflecting off the pavements, I felt a profound sense of determination, focus, and anticipation. My journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid, and the first moves in a carefully planned strategy had been executed with precision and clarity. The empowerment I felt was not merely personal, it was a recognition of the truth, a statement that deception, manipulation, and betrayal would not go unchallenged. I would continue to act decisively, assert influence, and ensure that justice, fairness, and accountability were not only pursued but achieved. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities, challenges, and opportunities, and I felt ready, focused, and unwavering, prepared to face whatever unfolded with confidence, strategy, and control. Every decision, every action, and every interaction moving forward would be informed by the lessons learned, the strength gained, and the authority reclaimed through careful preparation, clarity, and determination. I felt a surge of confidence, tempered by awareness and strategic thinking, knowing that the coming chapters of my journey would solidify the foundations laid and ensure that truth, justice, and empowerment were undeniable. The morning arrived quietly, but my mind was anything but calm. Every detail from yesterday's confrontation replayed endlessly, highlighting the reactions, expressions, and unspoken realizations that had shifted the balance of power in my family. I knew that today demanded a new level of strategy, preparation, and precise execution. Dressing quickly, I chose clothing that projected confidence, authority, and readiness, signaling to myself and to anyone I encountered that I was fully in control. The documents I had meticulously prepared were secured in my bag, each sheet representing leverage, truth, and undeniable evidence. Stepping into the streets, the city felt alive with energy, the hum of activity echoing the tension I carried inside. I was acutely aware that every person, every interaction could influence the trajectory of my plans, and I moved with purpose, focusing on the objectives I had set. At the office, my assistant greeted me, handing over updates, messages, and new intelligence that required careful attention. We worked swiftly, analyzing patterns, reviewing details, and preparing contingencies for potential reactions from family members and associates. Each decision had to be deliberate, precise, and impactful. By late morning, I had formulated a clear plan for further engagement with my family, one that would consolidate my authority and ensure that accountability was firmly established. I reviewed every detail, anticipating counterarguments, emotional reactions, and potential challenges that might arise. Lunch was brief, taken while reviewing the schedule and rehearsing my approach to the next stage of confrontation. I knew timing was critical, and every step had to reinforce the message of truth, power, and inevitability. Afternoon came quickly, and I returned to the mansion, documents in hand, prepared to guide another gathering that would cement the transformations initiated previously. Entering the foyer, I could immediately sense the tension in the air, subtle shifts in posture and expression reflecting the anticipation of what was to come. Conversations halted, eyes turned toward me, and a quiet acknowledgement of my presence filled the room. I held my head high, moving deliberately toward key family members, every step reinforcing authority, confidence, and control. I began presenting additional evidence, meticulously curated to expand upon the revelations of previous days. Each photograph, document, and recording was carefully chosen to illustrate the depth of deception, manipulation, and hidden agendas that had long remained unchallenged. Reactions varied, from stunned silence to whispered speculations, as the weight of undeniable truth pressed upon every individual present. I maintained calm, measured delivery, ensuring that clarity and precision guided each statement. Parents, siblings, and extended relatives shifted uncomfortably, realizing that ignorance could no longer protect them, and that the consequences of their actions, or inaction, were now fully visible. Discussions unfolded, questions were raised, and defenses were considered, but the momentum of truth was firmly on my side, leaving little room for denial or distraction. By evening, the atmosphere had evolved into a tense awareness, a recognition of shifting dynamics and the acknowledgement of authority that I had begun to assert. I moved among family members with keen observation, noting subtle changes in expression, tone, and demeanor, cataloging these insights for future strategy. Every conversation, every pause, every carefully structured explanation reinforced the narrative I was establishing. That deception and betrayal could not prevail against preparation, clarity, and deliberate action. Exiting briefly to the balcony, I surveyed the city below, reflecting on the precision of the steps taken, the reactions observed, and the empowerment gained from meticulous planning. The lights of the streets, flickering against the darkening sky, mirrored the clarity I had brought to a previously opaque situation. Returning inside, I addressed key figures once more, clarifying points, emphasizing accountability, and reinforcing the inevitability of consequences. Each statement, each carefully timed pause, each logical explanation further cemented the shift in authority and understanding within the family dynamic. As the night progressed, I observed reactions with focused attention, noting the subtle interplay of emotions, interpretations, and unspoken acknowledgments. It became evident that the groundwork laid over the previous days was now solid, establishing boundaries, asserting truth, and demonstrating the reach of preparation and strategy. Conversations gradually softened as recognition of the evidence, strategy, and authority took hold. Respect, apprehension, and cautious admiration became apparent in posture, tone, and expression, signaling a successful progression of the plan. By the end of the evening, the room had transformed into a space of awareness, accountability, and recognition of the power of preparation and action. Stepping outside into the night air, I inhaled deeply, savoring the satisfaction of momentum gained and progress made. The city hummed softly below, indifferent yet reflective of the human drama unfolding above. Each step I took reinforced the understanding that clarity, strategy, and deliberate execution were the ultimate tools for achieving influence, authority, and justice. I knew that the journey ahead would continue to challenge me, presenting unforeseen obstacles and opportunities, but the foundation established ensured that I was prepared, confident, and capable. Every decision, every action, and every interaction from this point forward would be guided by the lessons learned, the authority reclaimed, and the clarity of vision that had driven each stage of the process. The night stretched on, full of possibilities, choices, and moments that required precise consideration. I felt a sense of readiness, focus, and determination, knowing that I could navigate these challenges successfully. Reflection brought insight, patience, strategic thinking, and measured action were indispensable in achieving long-term goals and asserting control over complex dynamics. As I walked through quiet streets toward home, I recognized the significance of each step, each preparation, and each carefully executed action. My empowerment was not merely personal. It was a statement of truth, authority, and accountability that could not be ignored. The city, serene and illuminated, mirrored the balance between calm reflection and decisive action that I carried within me. The lessons of the day, combined with preparation and observation, had strengthened my understanding of influence, control, and the inevitability of consequences. I felt a profound sense of satisfaction, tempered by awareness, as I recognized that each deliberate move reinforced the authority I had begun to establish. The night concluded with a quiet understanding that momentum had shifted irrevocably, boundaries were firmly in place, and the tools of clarity, strategy, and preparation would continue to guide each step forward. I was ready to face the next chapter, confident that truth, diligence, and careful execution would ensure accountability, respect, and empowerment. Every interaction, every observation, and every decision from this point would contribute to the ongoing assertion of influence, authority, and the pursuit of justice. And as the city settled into its nighttime rhythm, I felt a quiet confidence, a sense of control, and the empowerment that comes from deliberate, calculated, and unwavering action. The day started with a storm brewing inside me, a mix of anger, determination, and the desire for reckoning. Every detail of the past, every betrayal, and every insult fueled a fire I could no longer ignore. I had waited, planned, and observed for weeks, and now the moment for action had arrived. Dressing with precision, I chose clothes that reflected authority and control, garments that signaled power while allowing me to move swiftly and decisively. In my bag rested the culmination of every plan, every piece of evidence, every weapon of truth and strategy one had meticulously prepared. Stepping into the city, the world seemed sharper, edges clearer, as if reflecting the intensity of my purpose. Each step carried weight, every glance, every movement deliberate. I knew the impact I was about to unleash would be irreversible, shattering illusions and ensuring consequences were felt. Arriving at the mansion, the air felt charged with anticipation. Staff and family members alike sensed a shift, tension hanging thick around every hallway, every room. I entered with confidence, each step measured, projecting a calm that concealed the storm raging within. Eyes turned toward me, curiosity, anxiety, and a silent recognition of authority in their gazes. I had rehearsed every interaction, predicted every reaction, and now it was time to execute flawlessly. I began with subtle confrontations, highlighting small inconsistencies, gently exposing truths that hinted at a larger reckoning. Reactions rippled through the room, whispers, glances, sudden movements, a tangible unease growing as my presence and words began to reshape the atmosphere. Then came the evidence, revealed methodically, designed to maximize impact, surprise, and accountability. Every photograph, recording, and document meticulously chosen to illustrate betrayal, dishonesty, and hidden agendas. Gasps, murmurs, and shifts in posture signaled the effectiveness of each reveal. I maintained calm, letting the storm of realization wash over my family, knowing that the weight of truth was a more powerful weapon than any shout or accusation. As the tension escalated, I introduced more dramatic elements, calling attention to critical moments of deception and manipulation, highlighting failures, and emphasizing consequences. The room grew tense, conversations stilled, and every eye was fixed upon me, the orchestrator of justice and reckoning. I moved deliberately, stepping closer to those most responsible, letting the weight of my presence and the evidence press down, unrelenting and undeniable. My voice remained measured, even as the impact of each revelation struck like thunder. By mid-afternoon, the atmosphere had shifted completely, the family's power dynamics, pride, and pretense had begun to crumble under the precise pressure I applied. I was relentless, showing no mercy, allowing the full force of exposure and accountability to resonate. Every whispered doubt, every hidden agenda, every subtle act of deception was revealed, forcing acknowledgement, regret, and fear. I watched as relationships fractured, alliances faltered, and the house of cards built over years collapsed in real time, the air heavy with tension and astonishment. No one could escape the consequences of their choices, and I ensured that the revelation of truth was absolute, leaving no room for denial or evasion. As the evening approached, I introduced the final, most striking pieces of evidence, revealing actions that were previously hidden, undeniable, and devastating in their clarity. The reactions were immediate: shock, disbelief, guilt, and a palpable sense of powerlessness filled the room. I remained composed, allowing the full magnitude of their mistakes and betrayals to sink in, ensuring that the impact of my strategy was complete. I had planned this meticulously, each moment designed to maximize effect, each step calculated to ensure the consequences were unforgettable. By nightfall, the mansion had transformed into a scene of reckoning, the air electric with realization and subdued fear. I moved among my family, guiding understanding, clarifying details, and reinforcing the inevitability of accountability. My presence, the evidence, and the strategic execution had reshaped the narrative, leaving no escape from responsibility. Stepping onto the balcony, I looked down at the city lights, reflecting on the precise execution of my plan. Satisfaction surged, tempered by awareness of the work still ahead. I knew that the storm I had unleashed was irreversible, the lessons undeniable, and the power I reclaimed unchallenged. Returning inside, I concluded the session, ensuring every individual understood the depth of their accountability and the consequences of their choices. The night ended with a clear shift in authority and understanding. Respect, fear, and acknowledgement of my control had replaced ignorance and pretense. Every interaction, revelation, and deliberate act had led to this point, a culmination of strategy, preparation, and unyielding resolve. The storm of justice had been unleashed, and the mansion, once a place of subtle manipulation and hidden agendas, was now a stage for clarity, accountability, and power reclaimed. As I left, documents in hand, every step echoed with purpose, confidence, and authority. The family had learned, irrevocably, that deception and betrayal would be met with precision, strategy, and consequences. I felt the power, the satisfaction, and the intensity of a plan executed flawlessly, a strategy completed with unrelenting focus. And though the night was quiet, the impact of my actions would echo for years, a permanent testament to preparation, truth, and the calculated execution of justice. The storm had passed, but its effects remained indelible, reshaping every relationship, every perception, and every dynamic within my family. I walked into the darkness with calm and certainty, knowing that the most brutal, precise, and unforgettable act of reckoning had been delivered, leaving no doubt, no denial, and no escape.